USPAP 7-hour update course, page 5, 2 primary laws. This section of the course will cover the 2 primary federal laws related to fair housing and fair lending. The Fair Housing Act, FHACT, and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA. Note, in addition to the FHACT, including its 1988 amendments, and ECOA, there are other federal and state laws and regulations related to fair housing and fair lending. However, most of those laws take their roots from FHACT and ECOA. When laws such as the FHACT and ECOA are passed, the law itself will often specify that implementing regulations must also be adopted. The law will assign the authority to write and adopt those regulations to a specific agency. For example, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has the authority and responsibility to promulgate rules to interpret and enforce the FHACT. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, plays the role for ECOA. It can be useful to know which entity is charged with its administration or with its enforcement, as that entity may publish guidance about that specific law. End of page. Page 6. USPAP references. Sections of USPAP that are relevant to the introduction to fair housing laws include definition of appraiser, lines 77 through 78. One who is expected to perform valuation services competently and in a manner that is independent, impartial, and objective. Definition of bias, line 9. A preference or inclination that precludes an appraiser's impartiality, independence, or objectivity in an assignment. Definition of appraisal practice, lines 67 through 72. Valuation services performed by an individual acting as an appraiser, including but not limited to appraisal and appraisal review. Comment. Appraisal practice is provided only by appraisers. While valuation services are provided by a variety of professionals and others, the terms appraisal and appraisal review are intentionally generic and are not mutually exclusive. For example, an opinion of value may be required as part of an appraisal review assignment. Definition of valuation service, lines 166 through 167. A service pertaining to an aspect of property value, regardless of the type of service and whether it is performed by appraisers or by others. Competency rule, lines 306, 309 through 310. Competency requires recognition of and compliance with laws and regulations that apply to the appraiser or to the assignment. Competency rule, lines 299 through 300. In all cases, the appraiser must perform competently when completing the assignment. Scope of work rule, lines 364 through 365 and 371, and lines 378 through 381. Identification of the problem to be solved requires the appraiser to identify the following assignment elements. Assignment conditions. Assignment conditions include assumptions, extraordinary assumptions, hypothetical conditions, laws and regulations, jurisdictional exemptions, and other conditions that affect the scope of work. Laws include constitutions, legislative and court-made law, administrative rules, and ordinances. Regulations include rules or orders having legal force issued by the administrative agency. Additional material may be accessed in Appendix B of the downloadable document for this chapter. End of page. Quiz. This quiz has 3 questions. Number 1. The topic of appraisal bias is important. Ready, set, go. A, to federal appraisal regulators, but not state regulators. B, to both appraisers and the public. C, to the public, but not to appraisers. Or D, the appraisers, but not to the public. I'm going to go both appraisers and the public. You answered correctly. Okay. Number 2. Which statement is true about USPAP and appraisal bias? Ready, set, go. A, USPAP permits an appraiser to be biased as long as the bias is properly disclosed. B, USPAP was recently updated to prohibit bias by appraisers. C, USPAP does not address this issue of bias by appraiser. D, USPAP has always required appraisers to perform without bias. D, I'm going with D, and I answered correctly. So remember, USPAP has always required appraisers to perform without bias. Number 3, in preference or inclination that precludes an appraiser's impartiality, independence, or objectivity in an assignment is the USPAP definition of a preference or inclination that precludes an appraiser's impartiality, independence, or objectivity in an assignment is the USPAP definition of, I believe it's bias. Ready, set, go. A, bias. And you answered correctly.